In the gilded halls of palaces where power and luxury reigned, a darker truth lurked behind closed doors. Some of history's most powerful monarchs, entrusted with the future of their dynasties, committed the unthinkable. They killed their own children. Motives ranged from paranoia and political strategy to sheer cruelty, leaving families shattered and kingdoms in turmoil. These were not mere tragedies. They were calculated acts that altered the course of history, leaving scars that echoed through generations. This is the chilling story of power, fear, and betrayal. The palace has always been a place of grandeur, luxury, and celebration. But behind the opulent tapestries and golden chandeliers lies a world of fear, suspicion, and deadly ambition. In the annals of history, some of the most terrifying acts were committed not by invading armies or rival kingdoms, but by parents themselves, kings and queens, who turned against their own children. These acts were rarely driven by emotion alone. They were fueled by a twisted mix of paranoia, political calculation, and the unyielding demands of monarchy. The concept of royalty was inseparable from bloodlines. Every child born into a royal family represented the future of a dynasty, the hope of heirs, and the continuity of power. But that very continuity also bred fear. A king or queen might see a child as a threat, whether because of rivalry, prophecy, illness, or perceived betrayal. The same parents who celebrated a child's birth might, under the weight of paranoia or ambition, become the executioner of that child's life. Case 1. Ivan the Terrible and the murder of his son. Perhaps one of the most infamous examples is Ivan IV of Russia, better known as Ivan the Terrible. His reign was marked by terror, purges, and relentless suspicion. Yet nothing shocked the world more than the day he struck down his own heir. Ivan's son, Ivan Ivanovich, was known to clash with his father, arguing over matters of governance and courtly decisions. One fateful day, a heated argument escalated beyond reconciliation. In a fit of rage, Ivan the Terrible struck his son with a scepter, eventually fatally wounding him. Historical accounts describe Ivan's grief as genuine, but no remorse could erase the impact. The Russian succession was thrown into chaos, altering the trajectory of the entire dynasty. This case illustrates the lethal mix of paranoia and power. A ruler so consumed by control that even his closest kin could not escape his wrath. Case 2. The Medici family's deadly intrigues. The Medici dynasty of Renaissance Florence, famed for their patronage of the arts and banking prowess, also had a darker, blood-stained legacy. Lorenzo de' Medici, while celebrated as a wise ruler, faced the brutal realities of succession. Political rivals and internal family tensions made the threat of betrayal constant. Some Medicis resorted to poisoning or orchestrating the deaths of their own children, not always publicly documented, to secure alliances or eliminate potential rivals. The fear of scandal or revolt often outweighed parental love, and history remembers these acts as stark reminders that power could distort even the most sacred bonds. Why would a parent kill their child? At first glance, the notion seems incomprehensible. How could a parent, entrusted with life, decide to take it? In royal families, however, the stakes were extraordinary. 1. Political threat. An heir could be viewed as a rival. If a king feared that a child might challenge his authority, especially in cases of succession disputes, elimination was often seen as a necessary evil. 2. Paranoia and mental illness. Monarchs like Ivan IV exhibited symptoms of paranoia, mood swings, and violent impulses. In such cases, fear of betrayal, even imagined, could manifest in lethal ways. 3. Dynastic strategy. Some rulers believed that removing a weak or undesirable child was necessary to strengthen the lineage. In cultures where the survival of the dynasty was paramount, children were sometimes judged by their physical or mental health, and those deemed unfit were quietly removed. 4. Superstition and prophecy. Throughout history, omens and prophecies influenced royal decisions. Children perceived as cursed, unlucky, or threatened by fate were occasionally killed to prevent disaster. These motives underline a chilling reality. In royalty, the family unit was rarely about love alone. It was intertwined with politics, ambition, and fear, creating circumstances where even the most fundamental parental bond could be severed by power. Case 3. Herod the Great and the Massacre of Innocents. The biblical account of King Herod in Judea demonstrates one of the most notorious examples of this phenomenon. According to historical and religious sources, Herod, threatened by the prophecy of a newborn king of the Jews, ordered the massacre of all male infants in Bethlehem. While not all details are historically verified, the narrative reflects a recurring theme. Paranoia and fear of losing power could lead a ruler to commit horrific acts against children, innocent lives sacrificed in the name of security and authority. Even beyond biblical accounts, Herod's reign was characterized by ruthless decisions regarding his own family. Wives and children alike fell victim to his distrust, a pattern that underscores the lethal intersection of ambition and paternal instinct twisted by power. The psychological toll on the monarch. While the acts themselves were horrifying, history also shows the psychological consequences for the rulers. Ivan the Terrible reportedly mourned deeply for his son, experiencing guilt that haunted the remainder of his life. Herod's paranoia consumed him until his death, a man tormented by fear even after eliminating the perceived threats. These stories reveal a tragic paradox. Rulers who sought to protect their power by killing their children often found that these acts only deepened instability and personal torment. The very measures meant to secure a dynasty sometimes sowed chaos, rebellion, and grief. The line between love and fear. Section 1 establishes the unsettling reality of royal parenthood. The line between love and fear was razor thin. In monarchies where power was absolute, every decision carried life or death stakes, and the most intimate relationships could turn deadly. From Ivan IV to the Medici family, history records a series of chilling examples where parental love was eclipsed by paranoia and political necessity. Yet these cases also prompt a deeper question. Were these parents monsters or victims of a system that demanded absolute obedience and loyalty to the crown above all else? As we move into Section 2, we will explore more examples, including the psychological and political dynamics behind these tragic acts. We will uncover the shocking stories of rulers who, in their quest for control, committed unspeakable acts within their own homes, forever altering the fate of their dynasties and leaving an indelible mark on history. In royal courts, the palace walls were thick, yet they could not contain the whispers, rumors, and terrifying secrets that lurked inside. Many monarchs who killed their own children did so quietly, but the repercussions of such acts often shook entire dynasties. The combination of absolute power, paranoia, and a relentless pursuit of control created a volatile environment where no one, not even one's own blood, was safe. Case 4. Frederick the Great and the death of his nephew. Though Frederick II of Prussia did not directly kill his own child, his cruelty toward his family demonstrates the deadly culture that royal power could foster. Frederick reportedly mistreated his nephew, the Crown Prince, to the point of severe psychological trauma. While the prince survived, the story illustrates a recurring pattern. Even indirect acts of cruelty or neglect could endanger children in royal families, and the line between psychological and physical harm was often blurred. This highlights the often overlooked truth that royal children grew up in a world where fear and obedience were as important as love and nurture. The pressure to conform to dynastic expectations could turn parents into oppressors, and childhood into a life or death test. Case 5. King Henry VIII and the tragic fate of his son. King Henry VIII of England, infamous for his multiple marriages and ruthlessness, also left a mark of tragedy on his children. Though he did not directly kill his son, Prince Edward, his paranoia over succession, religious reform, and court intrigue indirectly endangered his heirs. The constant scrutiny, pressure, and political maneuvering created a climate where royal children were expendable instruments of state. Henry VIII's story reminds us that royal child deaths were not always acts of direct violence. Neglect, political manipulation, and forced expectations could all have lethal consequences, making survival in a royal household a precarious endeavor. The role of advisors and court intrigue. Royal courts were dense networks of advisors, courtiers, and rivals, each with their own ambitions. Monarchs often acted violently toward their children not solely out of personal desire, but because of manipulation or pressure from trusted aides. For instance, Empress Wu Zetian of China, one of the most powerful female rulers in history, reportedly killed her own daughter to consolidate power. Historical accounts suggest her actions were guided both by paranoia and the council of advisors who reinforced her belief that eliminating potential threats was necessary. In such courts, children were often pawns in a deadly game of strategy where the stakes were the survival of the throne itself. The psychological toll on royal families. When a parent killed a child, the psychological scars extended far beyond the immediate act. Siblings often grew up in fear, mistrust, and trauma, and the court at large became a theater of suspicion and anxiety. Children of such families were acutely aware that they too might become targets if they strayed from the monarch's favor. In some cases, these acts created cycles of revenge and further bloodshed. The Ottoman Empire, for example, institutionalized fratricide, where new sultans often ordered the execution of their brothers and other male relatives to prevent rebellion. While not strictly parental, these acts were extensions of the same brutal logic. Power and survival took precedence over familial bonds, and children were inherently vulnerable in this deadly hierarchy. Case 6. Queen Marie Antoinette and the fear of losing heirs. Marie Antoinette's life was a study in the extremes of royal parental pressure. Though she did not kill her children, her son Louis Charles suffered profoundly under the shadow of political upheaval. During the French Revolution, the boy was imprisoned, neglected, and ultimately died in captivity. While Marie Antoinette herself was executed, the tragedy of her child's death highlights a recurring theme. The royal child's fate was often inseparable from political machinations, where the line between survival and demise was perilously thin. The lesson here is stark. The monarch's obsession with power, control, and dynasty often created circumstances where children, though innocent, became casualties of ambition, fear, or circumstance. The intersection of prophecy, superstition, and violence. In many cultures, superstition and prophecy played a significant role in the decision to harm children. Kings and queens were often swayed by astrologers, soothsayers, or religious advisors who predicted danger from certain heirs. Belief in curses, omens, or divine warnings could justify horrific actions in the eyes of royalty. King Herod's massacre, as discussed in Section 1, exemplifies this intersection. Similarly, in some Asian and African dynasties, children were sacrificed or abandoned due to fear of prophetic threats to the crown. While these acts may seem extreme, they were consistent with the worldview of rulers who believed that maintaining power required eliminating potential threats before they could materialize. The human cost behind the history. It is easy to focus solely on the shocking acts themselves, the striking of a scepter, the decree of execution, but the human toll behind these events is often overlooked. Royal children who survived abuse or indirect harm frequently carried trauma into adulthood. Some became tyrants themselves, while others struggled with mental illness or personal instability. Even the monarchs themselves were not immune. Historians often note that rulers who killed their own children were haunted by guilt, fear, and paranoia, a testament to the complex psychology behind these tragedies. Power granted them the ability to destroy life, but it also exacted a steep emotional and psychological price. Section Summary. By examining these cases, it becomes clear that the deaths of royal children were rarely random or impulsive. They were calculated, tragic acts rooted in a complex interplay of fear, ambition, superstition, and political necessity. Monarchs often believed that eliminating a perceived threat, even if it was their own child, was essential to securing their dynasty. The chilling patterns of history remind us that in the royal world, love and duty were often in conflict, and children could become victims of a system designed to prioritize power over human bonds. As we move into Section 3, we will confront the most extreme examples, explore the consequences for dynasties and nations, and reflect on the enduring legacy of these horrifying acts. Case 7. Emperor Nero and the position of his mother and heirs. The Roman Empire provides an example of how concerns about authority could influence family relations. Emperor Nero, remembered for his distinctive rule, reportedly made decisions that affected his stepbrother and his mother, Agrippina, with the aim of preserving his authority. Although Nero's children were not always directly part of these events, historical accounts suggest that his governing style created an environment in which heirs and relatives often lived with uncertainty about their roles. Nero's reign shows how a ruler's state of mind could shape conditions within the royal household. The expectation of disloyalty, whether real or imagined, became a reason for exceptional measures. His actions also formed a pattern. In systems of absolute authority, the possibility of exclusion was constant, and the family line itself was never fully secure. Case 8. King Charles VI of France and his children. King Charles VI, often referred to as Charles the Mad, experienced recurring periods of mental illness that influenced his reign. His condition sometimes extended into family matters, and his children reportedly faced neglect or inconsistent care as a result. Although clear evidence of intentional harm is limited, the lack of stability and protection created difficult circumstances for royal offspring. In these situations, the combination of inherited responsibility, health conditions, and political pressure created circumstances where royal children were not only affected by chance, but also by broader structural challenges. The royal household, instead of serving as a place of security, frequently became a place of uncertainty. Institutional practices affecting royal children. In some dynasties, the removal of children or siblings from succession became a recognized practice. For example, in the Ottoman Empire, new sultans often arranged the displacement of younger brothers and possible heirs to prevent disputes. While not always carried out by parents, these decisions reflected a particular logic. Children and siblings were viewed as possible rivals, and their exclusion from succession was seen as a practical, though difficult, solution. Similarly, in certain African and Asian monarchies, royal children were sometimes set aside due to cultural beliefs linked with prophecy or tradition. In these contexts, the stability of the throne was regarded as more important than the preservation of individual members of the family. Although very different from modern perspectives, this illustrates the extent to which rulers acted in order to protect continuity of power. The effects on dynasties. The absence of royal children often created instability within dynasties. When heirs were excluded, disputes over succession frequently arose, at times leading states into extended internal conflict. In Russia, the difficulties between Ivan IV and his son contributed to the period known as the Time of Troubles, marked by disorder and uncertainty. In France, challenges within the royal family, including those linked to limited parental attention or inconsistent leadership, also played a role in broader unrest that later shaped revolutionary developments. The wider effects were significant. Families became divided, siblings faced ongoing uncertainty, and rulers themselves carried lasting doubts. In many cases, entire societies felt the consequences as decisions taken within royal households spread outward into governance and culture. The moral and psychological lessons. These historical accounts highlight important observations about authority and human relationships. Absolute power had the capacity to weaken even the closest family ties, including those between parent and child. Ironically, the very systems designed to preserve dynastic stability often created conditions that led to its decline. Historians and scholars have examined these examples to understand the interaction of ambition, pressure, and family responsibility. While modern societies view such situations as unacceptable, in their historical context they were often explained as necessary for political continuity. This does not justify the decisions made, but it demonstrates the challenges and compromises connected with absolute rule. Reflection, power, fear, and legacy. As we reflect on the stories of Ivan the Terrible, Herod, and other monarchs, a chilling pattern emerges. Power, when unchecked, can warp the parental instinct, turning protectors into predators. Fear can override love. Ambition can eclipse compassion, and dynastic obsession can transform a child from a cherished heir into a threat to be eliminated. Yet these stories also offer lessons for modern audiences. They remind us that unchecked authority, paranoia, and the prioritization of power over morality have devastating consequences. They challenge us to consider the ethical dimensions of leadership and the importance of protecting the vulnerable, even in systems built around hierarchy and control. The enduring legacy. The legacies of these tragic acts persist today not in physical remnants of palaces, but in history, literature, and collective memory. Tales of royal cruelty have inspired countless stories, from Shakespearean dramas to modern historical novels and films. They remind us of the fragility of human morality under extreme conditions and the timeless struggle between love, fear, and ambition. Even centuries later, the names of monarchs who killed their own children are synonymous with tyranny and moral failure. Their stories serve as cautionary tales, warning of the dangers of absolute power and the ethical perils of leadership untempered by empathy. The chilling accounts of monarchs who killed their own children reveal a world where power and fear reign supreme. From Ivan the Terrible to Herod the Great, history shows that even parental bonds can be corrupted when survival, succession, and authority take precedence. These stories are more than historical curiosities. They are lessons about human nature, the corrupting influence of absolute power, and the moral responsibility inherent in leadership. As we study these tragedies, we are reminded to question authority, value empathy, and protect the vulnerable in all societies. History is not merely a record of the past. It is a mirror reflecting the choices, values, and responsibilities we carry today. If you found this story both fascinating and disturbing, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest secrets. Remember, history is full of lessons waiting to be learned, sometimes in the most shocking ways.